So it seems that Games Workshop has answered the question as to whether or not Boss Snikrot gets any new rules. It seems that the answer is yes, but perhaps in the most underwhelming possible way. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought we'd cover Boss Snikrot's mini datasheet update, and perhaps a couple of things that I might like to have seen them do it, and talk about whether there's possibility of new rules for Farsight. Basically the news is that there's a new Boss Snikrot datasheet to download from Games Workshop, but you probably may as well not bother, as you can remember the single change pretty easily I think. For those who've not met this orc before, Boss Snikrot is the leader of the Red Skull Commandos from Armageddon. Imperial propaganda teaches that the orcs come as a great mindless horde throwing themselves at the enemy with huge amounts of violence, and initial reports of orc commandos operating behind the lines, slitting the throats of many a Steel Legion guardsman, were at first met with outright denial, though it didn't stop the Red Skull Commandos from being a major source of terror on Armageddon. Boss Snikrot was the leader of them, fighting with the blackened blades of Mork's teeth, and he had an older resin model, though one that I thought looks quite good as they went. It got range rotated out from Games Workshop when they shot down a bunch of their resin things, but fortunately he's been saved from Finecast Oblivion, as GW have released this snazzy new model for him. The new mini came out in Boarding Patrol Orcs alongside Farsight's one. It doesn't seem like he's factored into Farsight's narrative in any way. Kind of a mini independent release for the Orcs, I suppose. The Boarding Patrol box sold out pretty quickly in most places. I feel like there were a fair few people who couldn't get their hands on one, but fingers crossed there shouldn't be too long to wait for an individual model release, hopefully in the next month or two. I really was a bit unsure as to whether or not he'd actually have his own individual rules or not. It maybe didn't really feel super necessary as they went. His datasheet I think is still pretty reasonably strong, does the purpose to represent him. It's not really like his war gear has changed in a massively meaningful way. He still fights with those Mork's teeth, and the appearance of the model is pretty similar, bar adding a smoke bomb to his base and having a silent slugger on his belt. They do sometimes tweak things when a new model comes out though, say with Primaris Azrael, no real major reason to up his stats other than crossing the Rubicon, and they decided to make his sword bigger and badder as well. I feel like giving him a rules buff wouldn't have been the worst idea though. I feel like you could make him very strong and it wouldn't be particularly unbalanced due to him currently being locked in Blood Axis. They're one of the lesser played Orcs clans at the moment, so maybe just having him as a ridiculously strong character could actually have been kind of fine. A major reason to play the faction and not just take the massive melee boost that Goths get. In any case, here's his datasheet. He's still an HQ for the Orcs and doesn't have the War Boss keyword, so it is kinda nice that you can field him as another boss without using up one of your 2 War Boss allowances in Arcs of Omen with heroic support. He's a toughness 6 wound character with a 5+ invul, and he hits you with a whole bunch of attacks with Mork's teeth. 6 attacks at strength 6, AP 2 and damage 2, and he's basically a commando boss. He can forward deploy with them, gives them an extra +1 to hit when they're nearby, and he also gets their rather nice Throat Slitter special rule, which gives you an extra +1 to wound when you're near terrain. That's pretty meaningful, and on a whole flurry of strength 6 attacks, that's going to be a big improvement. He also debuffs enemy morale and gets buffed to his save when he's in cover too. All of this isn't exactly new though. Literally the only reason that Games Workshop have decided to unleash this datasheet is that he's gained a slugger. I don't know if they were just getting a lot of people say, why can't I fire his slugger that is slung across his belt, but it seems that they felt this was important enough to actually give you a new datasheet for, to make sure that he gets his crucial 5+ to hit strength 4 shot. Points wise, they have reissued the points again, and he does remain 95, the same as he was before. Overall I'd still rate him as usable enough, but it's not like much has changed. Overall, I do find the update a little bit weird. Just seems a bit funny to go to the bother of reissuing a whole new datasheet and having it for people to download, literally to add the stat line of 1 additional slugger shot. I do think that it's purely motivated by the model and the fact that someone decided to give him a nice silent slugger pistol slung across his belt here. That's the only thing that's prompted a rules update, and it seems that they would have just left well alone if someone hadn't noticed that. Certainly rules wise, a single strength 4 hit on a 5+ will change just about nothing. Never mind the fact that he's got stick bombs as well, which you're probably going to want to throw instead against most targets, as you get d6 shots with that, not just 1. I feel like maybe they could have gone a little bit further with the changes here. If you're going to go to the effort of reissuing a datasheet, maybe you could have changed the rules just a little bit to help him be fielded. I think if I had one desire for changing Snikrot's rules, it would have been to allow him to be fielded alongside other Orc clans, as we already have with a few support characters in the book, things like Zogrod Wartsnagger of the Snakebites or Mad Dog Grotsnik of the Death Skulls. Lots of these orky characters that are a bit mercantile in their nature. They can just basically be hired out by the other clans, not get their own clan traits, but they don't prevent the rest of the detachment from getting theirs, and it just means they're a bit more playable in more orc armies, unless you're just otherwise committing fully to the blood axes. Currently, I just feel like you're a bit less likely to see him hitting the table in any sort of majorly competitive list, as you can't take him in either Goths or Death Skulls, and they're the two most competitive clans right now, and I feel like Snikrot on his own isn't enough to outweigh the benefits of taking those. I feel like it could have made lore sense as well, seeing as he's kind of in a supporting role in Armageddon in the first place. But I suppose such a rule change might have required you to actually change the rules in the core Orc Codex via an FAQ or something, rather than an updated datasheet. Otherwise, Statline Boss wouldn't have been terrible, I think it could have been fine. And plus, I think a few people were kind of hoping that he might get to do something with that cool smoke bomb that he's got on his base. Maybe something like vanishing from the field, like Guardsman Marbo could do. That'd be really quite nice. Perhaps he could decide that he needs to get out of dodge at the end of the turn, drop the smoke bomb, and vanish off into the shadows. In general, though, the rules that he had already were fairly flavourful. He had a fair few special rules stacked on already, like that +1 to wound, buffing the commandos, and all of the other standard commando stuff. If you are playing Blood Axes, then I think he's actually a fairly solid character to take. He helps out commandos and has a good generalist fighting profile, and commandos are almost auto-included in competitive orc lists right now. It seems that just about every army seems to run at least some of them to dominate the midfield, and some go spectacularly heavy for some first turn big chopper charges. I think it is quite nice as well that he doesn't hog a war boss slot, so you could have him at +2 other bosses with the heroic support stratagem. Could mean that you've got quite a lot of greenskin elite muscle leading up your army. As mentioned though, the fact that blood axes are just a bit subpar rules wise means that he's very rarely likely to hit the table as a competitive pick. They were pretty rare to be seen even when they had access to that full expansion that they had, having stratagem options like that surprise stratagem or various bits for Storm Boys. Now they don't have any of those bits, they just feel a little bit lackluster. A bit of light cover and fallback and charge aren't terrible, they just don't seem quite as good as loads of Death Skull Obsec or loads of Goth Melee. The update maybe does bring the question of whether Farsight might get an updated datasheet or not back into the fore. I guess if they are prepared to redo the Orc one, they might well redo this guy's, but seeing as the only change that they made to Snikrot was to give him a slugger, I feel like it's kind of unlikely he's going to get anything major as an update, and at most they might tweak a little bit of war gear perhaps. Compared with the old model, the only real major change is the addition of that talisman that he uses to hold the Dawnblade in check. I feel like, as with the Talisman of Arthas Moloch, you could have that as a Deny the Witch type ability. Again, though, like some of the Primaris characters, you could have just given him some boosted stats from having a bigger, badder suit, and I don't think that anyone would have been too surprised at that. Obviously, if we're going fluffy though, then why not just give him the Warp Locust keyword and tweak those Battle Brothers rules to allow him to summon up some blood letters? That seems to be the sort of thing that he enjoys these days. In any case though, let me know what you make of Snikrot's updated rules. Do you think the Games Workshop should have done something different with this? Or is just allowing him to unleash the full power of that horribly inaccurate slugger enough to be going on with? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly try and keep up with Games Workshop's news and rules updates. I do tend to post new videos just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description if you'd like to help support. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.